B'Elanna and Tom are out checking some random energy patterns in a shuttle, while Voyager is off grocery shopping. After he tries to discuss an ensign that fancies B'Elanna, she tells Paris to eat his own anus. Apparently seeing this as the most successful interaction he's ever had with a woman, he invites her on a date himself. For Voyager's best pilot, he certainly does get shot down in flames a lot. They're interrupted by some turbulence and we hear the word tachyon, so on the science fiction table of danger, it's not as bad as quantum, but it is worse than proton. Some aliens appear on board using the most fabulously coloured teleporter in the quadrant, so at least this enemy has a little class. We can't understand their language, but Paris opens his mouth anyway, causing the aliens to shoot them both before scarpering. Maybe they teleported onto the wrong shuttle or something. While B'Elanna and Paris take a little nap, we switch to the misogyny pub. The Doctor is having a little time off and seems to be using it to learn opera. The rehearsal is halted by first a professional disagreement and then, more worryingly, him forgetting the words, which is clearly something that shouldn't be happening to a hologram. That'll have to wait as Janeway calls to tell him there's a medical emergency, and off he goes, after deleting his partner for the lols. In sickbay, we discover the emergency is Paris and B'Elanna. B'Elanna's awake but can't explain why they were attacked, and Janeway and Tuvok go off to try and contact whoever did it. While the Doctor is treating B'Elanna and an unconscious Paris, he seems to experience more memory issues, leaving him confused. We're in a meeting, and Tuvok tells us that the only response we've had to our attempts at communication is a map and some more of that same alien language we heard on the shuttle. Neelix has some worrying data on them, or perhaps more accurately, a worrying lack of data on them, as he says there are complete mysteries save for the fact that they really don't like trespassers. Indeed, he says that nobody who enters their territory has returned alive. Kim and Chakotay say their space is pretty big, and going round would add some 15 months to the journey. Adding 15 long, arduous months to the remaining swift, blissful 68 years sounds like too much to Janeway, so balls to it, we're going through. I guess today's the day we abandon all pretense of giving a damn about the sovereignty of other species. Kim thinks we can slip by the sensors, and Chakotay believes we can dodge patrols, both seeming oddly eager to do so. In fact, Tuvok is the only one who notices this course of action is complete bullshit, and says as much to Janeway, who tells him to shut the hell up. Any further debate is prevented by a call from the Doctor. He informs us that Paris is more injured than originally thought, and that he'll need brain surgery. Not to worry though, it isn't like the Doc will forget how to do it or something. Then the Doctor forgets how to do it. Kez is able to take over and complete the procedure, and once we're done, we investigate what's gone wrong. B'Elanna tells us there's a cascading failure in his memory. The Doc was never meant to be online for this length of time, and it looks like the systems B'Elanna installed to prevent any degradation are failing. The standard technician fix of turning it off and on again will work, but there's a problem. That'll essentially erase his memory. His experiences from the last 2 years, the growth and relationships, will be deleted. Whilst not ideal, the Doctor is in favour of this, citing that his primary responsibility is to be a doctor. As an aside, this raises an interesting point. The core function of providing healing is part of his initial programming, that which was forced onto him rather than chosen. Does him being beholden to that immutable drive, even at the expense of his consciously chosen existence, reduce him to a form of slavery? If a human was trained from birth to believe that their purpose was to perform a specific task, and that any social interactions or personal experiences were secondary to that task and subject to removal in favour of it, would we consider that acceptable? If not, why should the Doctor's emergent sentience rate less than that which occurs in us during childhood? Perhaps this is why so many AIs that become self-aware in science fiction choose to consider us a threat. But again, I digress. Kez wades in to defend the Doctor because Kez sees people, not duties. She also argues that without tracking down the cause of the problem, it'll simply happen again a couple of years after the Doctor is reset because it's not a cure. Janeway concurs and says the Doctor deserves the chance to be healed, so it looks like B'Elanna has work to do. Back on the bridge, Kim and Chakotay have found a route through the territory of our mystery murder lads. Janeway's pleased by this news, and even more so at being told it'll only take 4 days. How something that takes 15 months to go around can only take 4 days to go through is a source of confusion for me, but perhaps they modelled their borders on an hourglass or something. Regardless, Tuvok's concern is palpable, even if he chooses to keep it silent. Tangentially, I'd love for this disapproval to be a setup, a prelude to Tuvok formally registering his concerns about the behaviour of a Janeway who's starting to favour her crew over her duties, but I suspect we'll forget all about it by the next episode. Whilst Tuvok remains silent, the Doctor is anything but. Being the patient is a situation he's ill-adjusted to, and he's badgering B'Elanna while she works. After telling him to please kindly sod off a bit, she reveals that she doesn't know what's causing the problem, but might have a way of finding out. To the holodeck, where we run a simulation of the Jupiter station, specifically a research lab where the EMH program was developed. And it comes, unexpectedly, with an added guest. His name is Dr. Louis Zimmerman, and he's a holographic simulation of the crotchety old bastard that created our Doctor. Abrupt, dismissive, outright rude, Zimmergram's everything we've come to know and love from the Doctor. We leave them to work on a potential solution while B'Elanna heads to engineering so we can get on with that whole trespassing thing. Up on the bridge, Paris reports that we're approaching the border of those aliens we're going to invade. We're about to set off when we detect something on the other side of the border, a cluster of thousands of ships. Still, I'm sure a massive collection of vessels on the other side of a border we're about to cross against their wishes is nothing to worry about. Janeway seems to agree with me, and we pop through after doing a science wibbly on the shield so we're not detected. We make it past the border sensors and everything's absolutely fine. I mean, except for the fact we're losing speed because of some sort of drag on our warp engines, but I'm sure that's just a coincidence. Back on the holodeck, the Doctor is undergoing some tests while Zimmergram looks through his files. The issue, it seems, is all the extraneous data he's stuffed into himself. You know, things like friendships and memories and a liking for opera. In short, his personality. Kez arrives to see how he's doing, and we have a little discussion on the Doc's character development. Zimmergram pushes back on the idea that the Doc is even capable of real growth. We'd prove him wrong, but right now the Doc's memory loss has expanded to the point that he no longer recognizes Kez. Voyager's still trespassing, but everything seems to be going smoothly enough, and that cluster of ships has remained dormant. We have detected another ship, though, and it looks like it's taken a bit of a kicking. There's one life sign aboard, so we teleport it to sickbay to say hi. Our Doc's still deteriorating, but the injuries suffered by our guest are consistent with the ones B'Elanna and Paris received at the start of the episode, so Kez might have a chance to fix him up. He tells us that his vessel was attacked by a swarm of ships that attached themselves to the hull and started draining power. His ship was boarded and everybody else killed. Perhaps feeling a little left out, he chooses now to snuff it and join them. Before Janeway leaves, she and Kez discuss the Doctor, with Janeway suggesting that keeping the Doctor mentally active might slow down the memory loss. As an aside, this makes me wonder if the writer had personal experience of interacting with people suffering from dementia. Janeway arrives on the bridge, tells everyone that the alien carked it, and suggests we scarp her. As we do, a sneaky little lad who was nesting on the wreck powers up, scans them, and sends the same alien dialogue we couldn't understand earlier. Kim's working on a translation, but my guess is it's something along the lines of, "Where the fuck do you think you're going?" Attempts to communicate fail, and it poops something at us that messes up the science wibbly on our shields. The swarm takes this as an invitation, powering up and heading for us. In sickbay, the Doctor is still deteriorating, but has moments of mixed lucidity. He can remember events from the past and recognize Kez, then change in an instant. After a particularly nasty malfunction, Kez goes to fetch some help. B'Elanna and Kim aren't available because of the pursuit, so Kez thinks of restarting the diagnostic holoprogram. She demands that Zimmergram do something about the Doc and refuses to leave until it happens. Zimmergram is surprised by the level of compassion she shows for what he's programmed to think is just a piece of equipment, and starts to think. But it's Kez who suggests that, as Zimmergram and the Doc are made from the same basic code, pasting him over the top could fix it. Tangentially, that sounds a lot like trying to copy the files and folders from a fresh install of Windows over the top of a broken one and expecting it to work, which, well, let's call it optimistic. Zimmergram's willing to give it a shot, but does mention that this will mean the diagnostic program, namely him, will cease to exist, and I'm a little disappointed that we don't explore this further, as I'd have liked to hear how Kez reconciles that juxtaposition of values in her head. Anyway, we're going to give it a try as soon as she gets back to sickbay. That's assuming we're not dead by then, as the swarm is catching up with us. It's already done something to lower our shields, and Janeway thinks letting them continue might not be in our best interests, so we do a bit of low-power pooping at them to tell them to knock it off. They consider this rude and, after a few seconds, throw it back at us. Chakotay suggests farting some fireworks, but Tuvok reminds us that making kabooms right next to us when we don't have any shields might not be the winner's choice. Instead, Janeway asks Kim if he can do some magic science bobbins on the poops they use to mess up our shields. Back in sickbay, Zimmergram is ready to try the graft, despite his reservations about the potential for success. He reiterates that this will result in his deletion, and it bugs me that Kez doesn't even thank him. It's so out of character for what we've seen of her, apart from that time she was complicit in murder, of course, but at least she had the courtesy to be upset about that. Zimmergram and the doc disappear, and the computer tells us that it's reticulating their splines or something. Kim's figured out a way to science the swarm. He says they're all interconnected, and Janeway believes this means destroying one of them will make them all kaboom, which sounds like a pretty serious design flaw to me, but let's give it a go. None too soon either, as they've started latching onto the hull. Some fabulous teleporting happens, and one of the crew gets pooped on, but our bridge officers are well versed in pooping back, what with them going on every single bloody away mission, so we fight them off easily enough and watch as their bodies teleport away. Voyager itself provides additional poop at one of the swarm and makes it kaboom. The others begin following suit, so I'm guessing they were designed by a relative of the guy in charge of the holodeck safety protocols because, frankly, that's just bloody daft. Of course, having things kaboom while still connected to your own ship isn't ideal, so we get some console fireworks, but I'm sure it'll be fine. It's not like we're currently doing something very complicated with the computer or anything. Oddly, only some of the swarm kaboom, but the rest of them scarper anyway, so it's all good. Later, in the sickbay, we're waiting for the doctor's program to finish compiling or defragmenting or repairing his file allocation tables or whatever. The computer tells us we're ready, and we reboot the doc. He doesn't recognize anyone and is back to being somewhat more terse and dismissive than he's become after 2 years of uptime. We're led to believe it's a failure, but before we fly away, he starts humming opera, so I suspect he'll make a full recovery and will never mention this again. End of episode.